Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Planning Committee meeting at the East Cambs District Council. I don't know whether we've got any new members of the public here, but just to say welcome. And should you wish to, we normally go 2 hours before having a comfort break. That may not be necessary today, but should you wish to avail yourself of facilities, you can go out of that door there and turn left, or you can go out of that door and go straight on. Please leave and come as you wish, and as your comfort dictates. We have now a fire safety warning or information from Patrick Adams.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have no fire alarm tests scheduled, but if the fire alarm does sound, please leave by one of the two exits. You can congregate by the car park at the front of the building, but please don't use the lifts when leaving the building.
Thank you very much. And now we move on to agenda item number 1. And could I have apologies and substitutions, please?
Certainly, Chair. Yes, we have apologies from Chika Akinwale, Councillor Lavinia Edwards and Councillor Christine Whelan. Councillor Keith Horgan is substituting for Councillor Edwards.
And that's it, is it? Okay. And have we got any declaration of interests? No. Okay. Well, I now move on to item number 3. And is there any reason, members, why I shouldn't sign these minutes as correct on the meetings we had on the 15th of January and the 5th of February? Any reasons? No? Okay. We now move on to item number 4. And surprisingly, we haven't got any chairman's announcements this afternoon. I can see that's confusing some members. And now we move on to item number 5, which is presented by Rachel Forbes.
Yeah, come to me first, please. To me first.
Yes, we've had a late submission of some information, and David Moran will talk to that.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise members, when we were on the site visit, I was handed some plans by the applicant. Due to the fact that these plans have come to us on the day of the committee meeting, they have not been seen by any of the consultees when we went out to consultation, nor the planning officers. I've conferred with Lee, our legal services director, and we have decided to decline them, so we will not be passing them in front of members. Having seen the plans, I don't believe they had anything to arguments either way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Agenda item 5 is the erection of a 3-bedroom detached bungalow and associated works at 12 Swaffham Road in Burwell. This slide gives you the outline of the site location. And the next slide gives the site location in context with other points in Burwell. So the proposal is 1 new dwelling. It would involve the retention of the existing dwelling to the front, demolition of the existing garage at the site to provide access to the rear, removal of some trees, a new landscaping scheme and 2 car parking spaces. So I've got some site photos here. Obviously we visited the site this morning, but just to run through them. So we've got an image looking towards the rear of the site. That's in the top right corner. Image 2 is a view of the garage and neighbouring Leylandii tree. Then we've got a view of the 3-storey dwellings to the rear side boundary. Then we've got the bottom row, a view of the building line, a view of the neighbouring bungalows and looking back towards the host dwelling. So the main considerations are the principles of development, particularly backland development, design, character and density, and any other material matters. So whilst the principle of development in this location is broadly agreed on the basis of the development being within the development envelope, Policy Growth 2 requires applications to demonstrate that they would not harm the character or appearance of the area. On the principle of backland development, officers consider there to be harm to the character and appearance of the area contrary to Growth 2, and therefore the principle of development in this location is not supported. The proposal would result in the introduction of built form in a location which runs contrary to the prevailing linear character of residential development in this part of the settlement. This would result in an incongruous form of development which would harm the settlement pattern of the area. Furthermore, the proposal, by virtue of its siting and scale, would represent overdevelopment, contrary to policies ENV1, 2, and How To, the Design Guide, SPD, National Design Guide, and the NPPF. The next slide is a character area slide that Charlotte put together when she brought this application last time that breaks the character areas into blue, yellow, and orange. The site is within the blue character area, which has a prevailing character of detached plots set back a short way from the highway edge, large residential gardens, lower density, and a strong linear pattern with no backland development. So the proposal would be visible from the highway. It proposes overdevelopment to the rear. It extends the building into the rear garden of a detached single dwelling plot, and there's no precedent within this character area for backland development. Just to talk through some of the planning history in the area. So highlighted in red on the slide is the application site, and highlighted yellow is number 58 Swaffham Road, which is in the same character area. 2 applications for backland development have been received at that site. One in 2019 for 5 dwellings and a new access. That was refused and subsequently dismissed at appeal. The second on the same site was for 2 dwellings, garages and parking, and this was refused in 2023 and dismissed at appeal. So there should be regard to planning law that leans upon consistency in decision making. The principle of consistency is not that like cases must be determined alike, but that a decision taker ought, when considering materially similar proposals, to have regard to the principle of consistency and to have good reason if deciding to depart from the previous decision, providing reasons for any such departure. So following on from that, application 24003666 full on the site, which was for 2 dwellings, was refused at Planning Committee in November 2024 for the following reason. The proposal would result in the introduction of built form in a location which runs contrary to the prevailing linear character of residential development in this part of the settlement. The proposal would result in an incongruous form of development which would harm the settlement pattern of the area. Furthermore, the proposal, by virtue of its siting and scale, would represent overdevelopment. The proposal is contrary to policies ENV1, ENV2, and How To of the East Cambridgeshire Local Plan 2015, Chapter 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework, Design Guide SPD, and National Design Guide. So while the current application that you have in front of you today has reduced the quantum of development from 2 dwellings to 1, it does not overcome the previous reason for refusal. It still results in the introduction of built form in a location which runs contrary to the prevailing linear character of residential development, and it would still result in an incongruous form of development which would harm the settlement pattern of the area. While the reduction in the number of dwellings does reduce the scale of the built form proposed, the introduction of a dwelling in this location goes against the character of development, and therefore it's still considered to represent overdevelopment. The previous refusal forms a material consideration in the determination of the application, and for the application to be approved, it would need to have overcome the previous reason for refusal. As set out above, it is considered that the application has not done that and therefore is again recommended for refusal. So just on the other material considerations, we consider them to be residential amenity, highway safety and parking, trees, biodiversity and ecology, flood risk and drainage, archaeology and climate change. We considered in the previous application that these other material considerations were acceptable, and I consider that the same applies to this application, and my assessment of those is set out in full in the officer report. So in summary, members are recommended to refuse the application because it results in an introduction of built form in a location which runs contrary to the prevailing linear character of residential development in this part of Burwell. It creates an incongruous form of development which would harm the settlement pattern of the area. and it would represent overdevelopment. It's contrary to policies ENV1, ENV2 and How To of the local plan, Chapter 12 of the NPPF and the Design Guide SPD, and therefore members are recommended to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm now just going to have a small pause. The layout of the table here is not as normal, and it doesn't allow the officer to time the various speakers. And I'd like to close for just 2 minutes and move a few people round. David, that would include you moving one down there. This, I would say, this David comes and sits here. If you can take that. So, okay, in which case that's a simple thing. That's the traffic lights of the speaker. Ah, the wire. We can probably manage. There's only Mr. Kratz, and I think we can signal him.
I can say I'll make do on my one, so I'm not going to be put out by the fact that
Okay, well,
Got a timer on in front of you if you want.
right. The planning manager is going to time on his device, so we are okay. If you can. Okay, thank you very much. We're now going.
you want to maybe.
Ah.
Have a look. In my old order, which we hadn't had, but we could put on the laptops, which was put it on a big screen for you.
Yeah.
It was a lot easier.
Well, I do apologise about this, but I think it's essential we get things as they should be.
I know the rules, yes, thank you very much. Most members of the committee were here in November, I think it was, when this site was up before you last time. And I'm going to start with the last point raised by your officer, which was that all of the other material considerations, highway safety, residential amenity, ecology, and everything else, drainage, are all acceptable. And so it's not the details really, it's the principle that we're talking about. Now, last time I was here, I started off with a sort of history lesson about how from 1980 onwards, the presumptions against backland development, really tandem development, were taken into account as policies evolved. And if you do a word search on your current local plan, you will not find the word backland in it. I know because I did so about 22 minutes ago. And likewise, in your design guide, although we got onto that at the last committee, and your officer read from page 28 of the design guide, which predates the MPPF. It goes back to 2011. It does have a paragraph on backland development, and the officer read from page 28. Over the page on page 29, it explains the rationale, which was, and I'm reading from it, there can be no presumption that large executive houses and extensive curtilages should be able to subdivide their garden ground into smaller plots. It's important to retain a stock of housing that can accommodate the growth aspirations of Ely and the larger settlements in East Cambridgeshire, while there will be a continued demand for executive style dwellings. And for those of you who saw the site last time or this time, I don't think you need worry unnecessarily that the character of the host dwelling here, number 12 Swaffham Road, is going to be so adversely affected that an executive coming in to bring his business is going to be put off buying it. That's not the case here. What this is a single modest dwelling which has got room to accommodate another modest dwelling in the back. And with all due respect to Swaffham Road and to Burwell, this isn't the Royal Crescent in Bath. This is an area which can accommodate change, notwithstanding the previous character assessment of the area, because it is accepted that most of Swaffham Road has got ribbon development. In fact, a few doors down, there is a backland house, but it's by the by, because on the opening page of the officer's report today, you saw for yourselves on the right-hand side, there are bungalows that this one would be in line with. On the left-hand side, they come further forward to create a new building line. Not that the building line is a concept which has really survived the 1960s. So what you have here is another dwelling into the housing stock of the district. Obviously, it's a modest dwelling. Obviously, it's at the more affordable end of the scale rather than the six-bedroomed executive house that I seem to see so often when I'm sat at the back of the committee. It's been done in a way that causes no overlooking, overshadowing, dominating impression on neighbours. The Highways Authority have confirmed the access is completely satisfactory. It provides its parking, not in tandem form, but side-by-side parking. And indeed, if I went searching for the alleged harm, and although your officer said that harm must be caused to the character of the area, what the policy actually says, and it was on the presentation, is that there must be significant adverse impact. And what I'd invite you to find is to just distinguish what your officers have advised you and say, even if there is harm here, and in my view, there isn't, what there isn't is significant adverse harm. All there is another dwelling which does not cause genuine physical harm by its presence whatsoever. And because it would be quite difficult to see it, it doesn't cause significant adverse harm. I was at Burwell Parish Council where they unanimously supported this application, and the intention was to reflect what the members had said, and it was minuted as well, because I have the minutes here at their November meeting. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be delighted to take any questions if there are any.
And I'm sure you know the next part of the procedure is questions to the applicant. So members, have you any questions for Mr. Kratz? Away you go, Keith.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm interested to understand what, if any, pre-planning advice you sought from the council before this current application went in.
No formal pre-application advice for this application. Of course, it came hot on the heels of a refused application. A single reason for refusal was given for that application, and the reason why the local planning authority have to give reasons is so that the applicant can address them. And so what the applicant felt was that given the recent determination of the application and the ability to reduce the development, sometimes, and it was, again, the word was used in the officer's presentation to you, the word overdevelopment is used. Overdevelopment as a single word is meaningless unless you say leading to. And in this case, we felt that the leading to had been addressed by reducing the number of dwellings from 2:1. So no, there was no formal pre-app filling in a form, submitting the drawings, because we could predict that the officers may be, as a starting point, negatively inclined, but we had enough information to be able to address the reason for refusal. I think the application was registered within 4 weeks of the previous application being determined. So there was no need for any additional information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trapp. Councillor Trapp.
Thank you very much. I note that the new application doesn't actually address the grounds for refusal that the first one did, and I noticed you're going to appeal as well to this inspectorate. So why it hasn't addressed those issues that originally were given as a reason for not having it?
Stand because the previous one was refused on the grounds that it's backland development. Well, of course, it's backland development. There's absolutely nothing that the applicant can do to address that other than to mitigate against the consequences of it. And as I've said, the consequences of backland development are normally inadequate access. Once you've overcome that, then you look at overshadowing, loss of privacy, impact on ecology, biodiversity, the drainage issues. All of those have been addressed, as quite fairly your officers have confirmed to you. So there's nothing to be done with the details of it. It's whether the mitigation by reducing to one dwelling in the minds of the members adequately addresses the problem of backland development. And what we say is there are no residual problems. And again, if the Ordnance Survey extract that formed part of the opening page of the officer's report was put up, members could look at it and judge it for themselves.
Thank you very much.
Have we any more? Yes, away you go.
Thank you again, Chair. I'm referring to the matter that Councillor Trapp was talking about there, and I'm looking here on page 42 of the reasons for refusal of the previous application. And I will read, albeit a précis, the proposal will result in the introduction of built form in a location which runs contrary to the prevailing linear character of residential development in this part of the settlement. So if that's the primary reason that the original application was refused, are you trying to say that the current application overcomes that, and in fact it is not contrary to the prevailing linear character, or are you saying that's not possible to be achieved?
No, I'm not saying that. I wonder if the officers could please put up the Ordnance Survey extract, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's just that one will do. If you look at that, to the right-hand side, there are detached dwellings in a line. And the previous proposal was for a pair of semi-detached dwellings in line with that. So in order to address it, what we've done is put a detached dwelling in line, in layman's terms, with the dwellings on the right-hand side that all front Swaffham Road, Burwell. And so, yes, we feel that we've done enough, because what we've done is to provide a single dwelling in a single plot in line with all the ones to the right-hand side, whereas the previous proposal was for a pair of semis. And so what we feel now is that we are no longer incongruous, because we are reflecting the pattern of development in the locality, the spatial characteristics, so the distances between dwellings, and indeed the amount of rear garden space, because if you look at those dwellings, you'll see they have very modest rear gardens. So in every respect, we have now reflected the character of the locality by changing from a pair of semis into one detached bungalow, similar in scale to all of its neighbours on fronting Swaffham Road. Obviously, there's a Heinz 57 at the back.
That's sufficient for you, Councillor Holman? Okay, any more questions for Mr. Kratz? No, in which case we'll say thank you, Mr. Kratz. And officers, would you like to make any comment now?
I don't have any, but whether my colleagues do.
No, not for me. All right. So we've now got. Have members got any questions for the officers? Councillor. Yes,
Remind you.
I do know. I just have a stutter.
Yeah, it's just one question which I didn't see because of the trees. And and we wandered out because of the building site. Just to the left of, as one looks at it, there is a building which is set back. Is that a garage or a house? It's can't, I can't see you. That one, yes.
Yeah, that's the garage.
Okay, so it's not a house.
No, there's no residential development
Okay,
beyond the
thank-
house.
Right, thank you very much.
Any-
And
Carry on.
one further question. I think highways have said something about 8 meters of 5-meter driveway. Is that, it's may or may not be true, looking at that plan. It's the access, isn't it, off the road, which should be 8 meters long at 5 meters wide.
Yes, so they've said it needs to be is it a metal surface for 5 foot, sorry, 8 meters back for 5 meters in width, and that is what's shown on the plan.
It is because that what the distances weren't shown for the 8 meters there. Couldn't see. I could see the 5 meters, but I couldn't see 8 meters.
I think the bit, the numbers you're looking at, I can't quite tell if that does say what that does say, but it is shown 5 meters for 8 meters back. It's just that that number at the bottom of the plan that you're referring to doesn't, I don't think that is I think that's the visibility displays.
Right, it seems touch and go there. Does the 8 meters start from the road or from the walk from the property?
From there back to here.
That's the 8 meters. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We also have Councillor Lay, a question for the officer.
Thank you. Can we go back to the overall plan, please? That's the one I wanted you to have a look at, yes. If you have a look at plot 16, which is to the left from the road. Yes, the other side, to the left from the road. And if you have a look at what's actually happened in the back of the garden of 16, can you assure me that those properties behind were not originally part of the garden of 16? Can you enlarge that?
The 4 dwellings were part of the Station Gate developments. They weren't part of the garden.
They were never part of the
No, no.
gardens. Thank you.
Is that you done, Mr. Lay, Councillor Lay? Okay, are there any more questions for officers? No, in which case we now go on to general debate. So, Councillor Ambrose Smith.
I visited Burwell yesterday afternoon, and my impression was that a bungalow to the rear of the existing modest bungalow would not really be seen very much at all. And in fact, I think as you see the roofs of the houses behind, it would probably mask any indication. Mr. Kratz stole most of my clothes, I'm afraid, the comments I would have made. I struggle to see the harm that this would do. I myself live in a similar arrangement and I've never felt overlooked. And the host dwelling to my own home has recently been sold, and the first two people looked at it and made full price asking offers. So that suggests to me that in actual fact, overlooking is not felt to be oppressive. I really do struggle. I understand entirely the constraints that our officers are under. They have to make reference to various policies and things. But in all honesty, I do struggle to see the harm that this would cause. So anyway, that's my pitch. Thank you.
Have we any more speakers? Away we go. Councillor Horgan.
Thank you again, Chair. Probably this should have been phrased as a question to the officers, but I'll bring it up in this section and then they may wish to comment. But it would appear that the number 12 is at the sort of break point of the line of houses. So if you go to one side, they're all in line with properties that are built towards the front of the plot. And then you go to the other side, they tend to be more built further back. So where I'm wondering if there's any sort of advice or guidance that officers could give us is having two properties, albeit on the same current physical plot, where the line of the properties varies, but in that one plot. Do we know of any precedents where perhaps that has been decided in recent memory with this council?
This really should have been a question to the officer. However, the planning manager looks so he's poised to give you an answer, so we'll carry on with it.
Thank you, Chair. It'll be a very quick answer. The simple answer is I'm unaware of any similar circumstances.
To agree with the officer's recommendation. Have we any others either for or against the officer's recommendation? And if it's against, you should have reasons, planning reasons why you're going against it. Councillor Horgan.
I'm happy to second the motion from Councillor Trapp if one is required.
So both of those are to agree with the officer opinion. Have we any more comments from any other members? Councillor Ambrose Smith.
I would be happy to propose that we go against the officer's recommendation purely on the grounds that no harm would be made. I understand that that will have to be dressed up with some correct wording, but
No, you would have to dress it up with some.
right, I would probably need to take advice from.
Well, you could take advice. Of
Yes.
course. But we have the first proposal we got was from Councillor Trapp is to go along with the officer proposal, and that's been seconded by Councillor Horgan. Councillor Lay.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Christine here. I would second her proposal that we grant planning permission for this bungalow against the recommendations of the officers.
Okay, so we have a proposal to go along with it, which was made first, and that's ones we'll vote on first. And depending on the result of that, we may then move on to a proposal from Councillor Ambrose Smith, seconded by Councillor Lay. So I'm going to ask the question, will those members raise their hands who are in favour of adopting the officer recommendation to refuse the application? Please raise their hands.
Seven in favour of that.
And will those against please raise their hands? And are there any abstentions? Okay, then we won't progress to Councillor Ambrose Smith and Councillor Lay. The application has been refused, and and it was refused on 7-2. And we now move on to the planning performance report, item number 6, and that goes to David.
Thank you, Chair. As usual, members, I ask you to go to page 45, please, of the agenda, where we have the planning performance for January 2025. I'm happy to take any questions on the contents of the report.
Just a minor point. When I look down the list, I see Team North, Team South, and no team. What do I understand by there being no team and a total of 34? Oh, those are trees. Thank you very much for that.
Just to let members know, first of all, Councillor Horgan, we're looking into your request from last committee with regards to the additional information that you're asking for. I'll obviously give you an update when I'm able. What I wanted to let members know is from May committee, on a quarterly basis, we are intending to bring to you an enforcement report for each committee. This report will contain the actions which have been taken by the enforcement team. By that, I mean those things that are in the public domain that are on the enforcement register, and they will have a position of each one so that members are aware as where we're at with things, and they can obviously ask any questions they should have. I will need to gain some legal advice prior to obviously doing that report as to whether or not it be part 1 or part 2 on the agenda, and we will update you accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, members and officers, I'm sorry I delayed proceedings for a few minutes in the middle of that particular application. But it makes it very difficult for me to see the timing if it's down there, and it also, the vice chairman keeps a note of who's queuing up to speak, and then that helps me considerably. So I hope, and I can understand how it's happened, but can we on the next occasion go back to where we were before? That would be okay. Thank you very much indeed. So I now close this meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.